Well, welcome everybody. We are going to begin now our panel session titled Writing Expectations at Four-Year Institutions. And our four panelists are students, current and or former, who have experienced writing and all kinds of disciplines and coursework at GRCC as well as four-year institutions. I'm going to briefly run down the line and introduce them, and then ask them to introduce themselves in a more complete way. So we have Aurora, who is currently, I believe, a psych major at Grand Valley and going to be graduating in 2016. We have Ryan, who is majoring in English and French, I hear, and is also set to graduate from Grand Valley State University in 2016. We have Sam, who is a former GRCC student, as all panelists are, and is now attending MSU. And Tram, I haven't met other than just now, but we have Tram, who I'm sure will fill you in. Where are you at, Tram? Oh, okay, wonderful. So a recent graduate from Grand Valley State University. I'm going to ask questions and let the panelists answer them so you can hear from them. So we'll start with letting them introduce themselves. What school did you attend after GRCC, which we've heard that briefly. Anything that you want to say about your major, especially if I didn't. And what is your kind of current goals and year in school?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Like Marianne said, my name is Aurora. I went to CC for 3 years. I was working on my psychology classes, took a lot of writing classes here as well. And I just started at GVSU for my first year and my last year. Still as a psych major, and I still take a lot of writing classes for fun, because it's one of my favorites. And then I also dance professionally for my profession, so yeah.
Hello, my name is Ryan. I graduated from GRCC in 2013 with my associate in arts. I've been at Grand Valley since. I'm due to graduate in the spring. I am double majored in French and English, and I'm currently working on an application to teach in France next year. So I'm crossing my fingers for that.
Hello. It's weird to hear your voice on the speakers, I must say. I'm Sam. I go to Michigan State, go green. I major in English with minors in philosophy and law and film studies. I'll graduate this winter. I plan to go to grad school afterwards, maybe Michigan State. Other than that, wherever will accept me. And before that, I'm publishing a novel after I graduate, and I will be trying to use that to pay off the large amounts of debt I've accrued over the years.
I'm Tram. I'm a recent graduate from Grand Valley. I graduated with my major was Allied Health Science with a PA in Physis, which is physician assisting. Right now I'm working at Spectrum as a nurse technician, just trying to earn hours to get into graduate school.
All right, thank you. How's the sound out there? Good? Okay. Always good to have a sound check. So the first question I have for each and all of you is, what classes do you think of when you think of heavily intensive writing classes? What classes at your four-year institution really required writing? And what kind of writing is and was required of you?
Well, at Grand Valley, almost all of the classes I have to take require some sort of writing. Obviously, your English, literature, writing classes are going to require essays, research papers, things like that. But nearly all of the science classes require writing at Grand Valley. Biology, chemistry, psychology, things like that. I don't think I've ever met a student in a science class who hasn't had to write an essay or something to do with research. So yeah.
Also at Grand Valley, there is a supplemental writing skills requirement that you need to fulfill. And those classes, they'll have the SWS mark on it. And that's where you do have to write minimum 3,000 words in the semester. And as I am a foreign language major as well, that does apply to my foreign language major, so there is SWS certification for that. And there are linguistics courses that are required for the English major. There's an intro to linguistics that's required that also requires you to write essays in APA format as opposed to MLA format, something that I was really comfortable with at Grand Valley.
Yeah, at Michigan State, pretty much every class I've taken requires writing, and continue to take all requires writing. Even, there's one class, an astronomy class I took just as a gen ed, that didn't necessarily require a whole lot of writing, but there was an honors paper option, so I took it, and I wrote in a paper, and it was awesome. But there's going to be writing pretty much anywhere you go if you're taking an English route, anything like that. I mean, maybe in science you won't do so much literary analysis or research paper type stuff, but you're going to be writing lab reports all the time. So I can't really think of a field of study at Michigan State that you wouldn't do at least some writing in.
Yeah, all of them. It's just like you have to be able to explain yourself and what your thought process is, and the best way to do that is through writing. So there is nothing, like, there is no class that will be like, oh yeah, there's going to be no writing.
Okay, so since all of you attended GRCC and then went on to four-year institutions, I want to talk to you about, I guess, preparedness. Leaving GRCC, or with your experience in your writing classes, especially at GRCC, how well did you feel prepared to write assignments given to you both here and in your four-year university experiences? And also, if there's anything a why or why not kind of add, feel free to talk about that.
Yeah, so as far as coming from GRCC going to Grand Valley, I personally felt super prepared. I feel that the level of classes here, especially the basic writing courses, is it Writing 150 or is it English 101, 102?
101 and 102 here.
Yeah, I took 101 and 102 here. And at Grand Valley, it's Writing 150. But I feel that English 101 and 102 match the basic writing courses at Grand Valley almost exactly. I was really well prepared when I went into my higher level writing classes at Grand Valley, and even in my creative writing course that I'm in right now. Just because I had experience writing here, I felt more prepared to do other types of writing, just because I had those basic writing skills that came from CC. I previously had no experience doing creative writing or anything like that, but because I knew how to write, I could be fine in my creative writing course. So I felt plenty prepared when I transferred to Grand Valley.
I too was prepared. There's a lot of great English professors here at GRCC. I had Professor Lasser and Professor Weingarten, Professor David Cope, who's now retired, Susan Mowers. I mean, they all had me in a mode and a groove where I was prepared to write at a four-year university, but it is a process. You will realize when you get to the university, you're going to have to fine-tune your writing. I mean, I'm taking a world literature class right now, and professor's still stressing the importance of tying quotes into your paper, elegantly putting a paper together with citations. And this is writing about literature in particular. So it takes the whole 4 years. It doesn't just stop at CC.
Yeah, I was definitely prepared coming from GRCC. Any of the basic fundamentals of structuring an essay and writing, whether it's persuasive research, personal narrative, anything like that. Any of the essays I wrote here certainly helped with the transition of going to a four-year university, and I didn't have to take any of the early composition level classes at Michigan State, so I went right into the English, the higher up English courses like literary analysis and that kind of stuff, and then film studies writing. And I mean, so long as you can structure an essay and, you know, keep the flow going and stay on topic and basically make sure you're proving a point or something like that, then, I mean, writing like that is going to be the groundwork for any sort of writing you'll do academically.
I think because I majored in science that, like, I don't have, like, I didn't get to grow, like, creatively that much because I took so many science classes, but I feel like I was prepared because I got to build my voice through my writing. And honestly, like, even though when you're writing a scientific paper or you're writing a lab report, it may seem like you're just saying data and stuff, but you do have the ability to write with your voice, and if you can communicate clearly, like, that's the most important part. And I think that's what prepared me while was going here and taking classes with Nora and taking creative writing with David Cope, and, like, I think I felt prepared because of that.
Can I just add that there are resources here at GRCC? I'm sure you're all familiar with the writing lab, and never be ashamed of going in there because it's going to help you just that much more when you do get to a four-year university.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I believe at least one panelist, if not two, were tutors at the writing lab. Sam, you were. Ryan, did you tutor? Okay. I was thinking of you in the Literacy Center. So, Sam, do you want to say anything about tutoring in the Writing Center and your experience there?
Well, it definitely helped hone my craft in writing. I mean, the tutoring process is mostly just peer review. It's kind of just like a student comes in and asks for help on an essay or something at any stage of the writing process, and you just work with them. It's just kind of a one-on-one working process. And I actually work at the Writing Center at Michigan State right now, and it's relatively the same thing. It's a little more, you know, they have to set appointments and stuff because it's a lot bigger, but I mean, it's very helpful. Any chance I get to have a second pair of eyes on a paper I'm writing, because I know it's going to sound right in my head because I'm very convincing to myself, but another person might bring to light something that totally, you know, went over my head. So if only to look at it as getting a second pair of eyes on a paper, I think it's definitely worth it to attend any writing center you get to.
Thank you. So this might sound a little repetitive, but I'm working to hone in here, okay? So if you have to think about it a minute, you want to pass the mics around, see what happens. So in as particular of a way as you can think about it, what did you learn in your GRCC writing classes that was most beneficial when you transferred? So if you think about the most beneficial thing that you learned, you can go broad or right down to the nuts and bolts. And then the flip side of that, is there anything you wished you'd learned about writing here that you didn't?
Yeah, so as far as learning something about writing at CC, when I went to high school, you know, they teach you how to write 5-paragraph essays in high school. They tell you intro paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion, here's what you do in each one. I could do that very well when I came to CC. I knew how to just lay down the facts, get through a 5-paragraph essay, boom. But when I came to CC in my writing courses, that wasn't enough. I was getting marked down for not having creativity, a voice, things like that. So I was getting points off for doing like these typical 5-paragraph essays that were fine, but I wasn't using my voice, I wasn't being creative, I wasn't trying to make it fun in any way, I was just doing what I was taught to do, which it will get you a passing grade, of course, but sometimes it's not quite enough for college level writing. So by the end of my courses at CC, I really knew how to have a voice in my writing and how to kind of make things a little bit more fun for the reader. Obviously, research papers aren't the funnest to read in the world, but when you have a voice and, you know, an opinion and a little bit of creativity, throw in some fun facts or something, it makes the paper much more interesting. And I learned how to do that, and that really helped me get better grades and better scores in my writing classes at GVSU, because they expect that. They expect you to go a little bit above and beyond just a basic essay, a basic story with facts and, you know, perfect form. They expect you to go above and beyond that at a 4-year institution. You're expected to have a voice. You're expected to, you know, go into a little more detail than what you need. So I think that was definitely one of the most beneficial things I learned at CC because it prepared me for those classes at GVSU, so I wasn't just doing the bare minimum and getting, you know, B's and C's. So, yeah.
Anything that you wished you had learned that you didn't?
Can you come back to me?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll reiterate that learning the fundamentals of structuring an essay and making sure that you continue with flow throughout the essay and stay on topic, that's going to take you anywhere. And learning that here, I personally had Joan Gerns for my early composition courses, and she's not afraid to rip apart an essay, and you need that. You absolutely need that, because if you're just spouting some, you know, completely unrelated exposition, then it's not going to be good. So having that very close connection with professors here helps. I had somewhat of that benefit in a lot of the classes I took at Michigan State, because I took mostly English and philosophy related classes, but here especially you get to have that one-on-one time mostly with your professors, and that helps, because once you get into four-year institutions, there's going to be a lot of more bigger classes. So definitely driving home the idea of the basic fundamentals of an essay, just like Aurora was saying, that's going to help a lot at a four-year institution. And as far as something that I wish I would have learned here at GRCC, I mean, like any writer, I wish I would have learned how to get past the blank page. But I don't think you can necessarily be taught that. I think you just got to write. You just got to just get your thoughts out on paper and somehow try to organize them in a way that conveys yourself well.
Tram or Ryan, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, basic structure, but also being able to read and dissect something and be able to, like I mean, like I said, because I majored in science, I read a lot of research papers and a lot of studies and stuff. But if you, like, get to the nitty-gritty, they, like, people are just writing, and, like, I would read, like, a study about some psychology experiment, and they could have flowery, like, expressions and smart words and stuff, but when you can actually read it and be like, oh, they just played with puppets and looked for a reaction for a baby, like, I mean, I guess I learned how to be able to concise, I don't know how to explain it, like, be able to read it and then concisely make it my own kind of thing, and that's what really helped me here, because English 102 focuses on research papers, and I really suck at research papers because I always loved writing, but creatively, and I think 102 really helped me write better research papers. And what I wish I learned was Grand Valley actually focuses on APA format while they're citing. So, like, even though MLA is, you know, language arts and how to do, yeah. So I kind of wish I learned APA before I came to Grand Valley.
Aurora's nodding along with you. So is Ryan.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I got to Grand Valley, and we had to do APA format. And, I mean, there's resources online where you can look up how to do APA format, and you can follow that. But it definitely would have been nice to not have to be writing my paper and, like, looking up how to do APA format while I was doing it. So, yeah.
Ryan, do you have something you want to add here? Yeah, that's all right. We're at the point where what did you learn in your GRCC classes that was most beneficial, and if there's anything you wished you had learned while you were here that perhaps you didn't?
Yeah, the research papers, I had my comp courses, there was a research paper. I took a class with Professor Lacert where a research paper was also required, so I thought that was the most beneficial. Just learning how to organize information that you've extracted from reading and to make it interesting, because I think that research papers can be enjoyable to read. You can write about a mundane subject and make it interesting, and I think I kind of picked up on that while I was at GRCC. And then I do wish I had learned APA while at GRCC, but it's not too big of a deal. The professors at four-year university should be able to work with you. And the other thing is, I think you were, what was your name again? Tram, pardon. Tram was talking about concision and being specific. And those are things that you do start to pick up on more when you get to the four-year university, rather than just having fluff in your research papers or your essays, your literary essays, anything of that nature.
Yeah, Ryan, I wonder if you'd go a little bit farther, and I'll lead you here. You talked about a research paper in my class, and I believe you're talking about English 246, right? The writing for publication?
Yes.
Yes. And what I wondered if you could talk about, I mean, this was research beyond composition, right? Writing for publication is a class that teaches nonfiction writing, and often for the general public to read. And one of the things that we worked on is research is a huge part of journalism or nonfiction writing. It's not just all personal narrative. That's wonderful, creative nonfiction, but there's a lot of research that goes into being a professional writer of nonfiction, even if you write for the corporate environment. So I don't know if you can remember what you wrote about, Ryan, or talk about research in that way.
It was about cricket, the sport of cricket, popular in India, popular in England, Ireland. But it's, at first glance, you think cricket, what is this strange sport? It's from overseas, and I did tons of research, and I found details about the game. I looked up all the rules, and it's reminiscent of baseball, and I adore baseball. I look at baseball as poetry in motion, cricket's poetry in motion, and I was able to draw connections between those things. And I did actually do an internship writing with the Rapidian.org, a local online publication. So I was able to further hone my skills in another format of writing, Associated Press writing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks. Okay. Think broad GRCC rather than just necessarily writing classes. Is there anything you'd do differently during your time at GRCC? You can think about that for a minute. And if there isn't, that's okay. Ryan has something.
Personally, maybe I don't know how many of you are interested in being English majors, but at Grand Valley, in order to be English major, to start that English track, it is required that you have 3 semesters of foreign language proficiency. So I kind of wish, while I was at GRCC, I took my foreign language classes more seriously, because it turned out that I ended up wanting to major in French. I wanted to take my foreign language further, even though it just started as 3-semester requirement in order to begin my English and language literature degree at Grand Valley. So I'd say that, but besides from that, I spent a lot of time in the library. I spent a lot of time reading, so I don't have too many regrets. I had a blast here.
I wish I utilized all of the resources that GRCC offers, like the tutoring labs. Like, these people are awesome. I mean, they're getting paid like $10 an hour. You might as well utilize them, you know. Like, especially in the biology lab, they're amazing in there, and they will teach you. And I don't know. Like, I mean, I did well, but I wish I tried harder and went to the tutoring labs and did awesome.
So I think that this is going to sound cliche, but in general, I think I wish I would have taken more time to really grasp the material in my classes. I got good grades. I passed the test and everything like that. But I wish I would have focused more on understanding the material and really having like a deeper understanding of it rather than memorizing material to pass the test and then forgetting it. So for example, I took an intro psych class here, memorized all the material, forgot it as soon as I left, and then when I got into my upper level psych courses at Grand Valley, that intro level psych material was needed to understand the material for upper level psych courses. And it had just completely left my mind. It was gone. I didn't think I'd need it anymore, and I definitely did. So I kind of had to backtrack and kind of relearn some of those things. Like, if there was a question that regarded an intro-level psych concept, I was like, oh no, and I'd have to go back and look it up online to remember what it was. And I think that's really important for all courses at a four-year university. You're really expected to understand things at a deeper level. You're expected to not just study and then forget it. You really have to grasp concepts, not just facts, concepts. So, yeah.
I suppose it's my turn. I don't know. I think that I would agree with the foreign language aspect that Ryan was talking about, because at Michigan State, as an English major, in order to graduate, you have to have 4 semesters worth of foreign language competency, and so that's been a source of stress for me, because I was told by my we won't get into it, but you know, I mean, I wish I would have just taken more classes here. I probably wouldn't have been at Michigan State this semester. I would have already graduated if I had taken more classes here. I just was emphasizing work and everything, and mostly, well, free time. But yeah, if I would have been the 18 credit per semester student here, I would already be done with my undergrad. But I mean, other than that, it's hard to say I regret anything or that I would have done anything too differently, because I mean, I learned how to be a successful, you know, real student at GRCC, and I began to love academia and going to school and stuff like that while I was here. So it's hard to say that I would want to change that.
You guys made a really good choice going to CC, because like when you go to Grand Valley or to any four-year college, you'll see people are just like kind of robotic in their like what they want to do, because they just want to write a paper, just want to do the test, just want to do this. And like, because the campus is so small, because the teachers actually do care about you, you get to learn like how you are, like how you want to learn, and I think that helps you become a better student.
Okay, I'm going to ask just one more question, and then we'll turn it over for questions. If anybody has any questions from the audience, we can do those too. So I've heard some of the things in an English professor's language that I've heard you all talk about important in your writing: critical thinking, you know, drawing and inferring from your reading, clarity and conciseness, and going beyond the basics. So you all sound like you've been very successful in your four-year university pursuits. What words of advice or wisdom would you give yourselves, looking out in the audience, 2 or 3 years ago? Anything that you would offer up as advice?
I would say don't take school as seriously as you would like to. Yeah, it's important to get A's and it's important to get good grades, but just relax and enjoy it. And if you have to take a semester off, I took a semester off last year. I took a summer off, and it was too much. And then I was re-energized, I was rejuvenated, and I renewed my interest, and I'm back in school, and I'm set to graduate in the spring. But just take it one semester at a time, one class at a time, because it can get overwhelming. You think, oh my goodness, I have 3 years left for my undergrad, 2 years left for my undergrad. But before you know it, you look at that block of time, 4 years, I'm a 5th-year senior because I am double majored. It all eventually will work out. Just keep showing up to class, really.
So I would say my main advice would be that it's okay to explore while you're at CC. So if you're a writing major and you want to take a zoology course, do it. One, because it counts as an elective usually when you transfer to a four-year institution, but 2, you might end up switching your major to something that you really, really love. And I think that's one of the great things about going to GRCC is you get to explore, you get to go outside your major a little bit. There's a little less of that at a four-year institution. You still get elective credits, but you're supposed to graduate from a four-year institution. You want to be on track when you're there. At CC, you can explore a little bit. I did a lot of that. I switched my major 3 times, but I'm still perfectly on track to graduate because those credits counted as electives. So just don't be afraid to explore different areas of study or take a class just because you're interested in it. If it doesn't match up with your major, okay, but take it anyway if you're interested, because it might end up being really beneficial to you one day.
Well, specifically with writing, I would say take your writing courses at least seriously to the extent that they are going to lay down the foundation for your success as a college student in the, for the years to come, and if you pursue a bachelor's degree or further. I mean, especially because even if you're not majoring in something that has to do focus with writing, writing is not limited to simply coursework. Everything that I've done outside of school or that has helped me pay for school has been reliant on writing. I mean, especially if you want to apply to a four-year institution, you're going to have to write an essay. So, write that essay well, and you will probably get in, because that's mostly what they're looking at, besides obviously the grades that you've earned. And then, I mean, if you want to apply for scholarships, if you want to study abroad, these things require that you write an essay. The essays that I've written have gotten me scholarships, and I got to study abroad in London, and it was fantastic. So that being here and learning how to, really convey myself in my writing as well as I did, it's allowed me to open up a lot of doors, and it's been awesome. And also, especially because I do this a lot, and I think that it's really helpful, is if you're emailing your professors and you have a question, you want to try to clear up some confusion, the better that you can spell out your confusion to that professor, the greater the chances that she or he will answer you to your satisfaction, and the better chances that your confusion will be cleared. So take writing seriously, because we all want to be able to convey ourselves, and we all want to be at least eloquent enough to sound like we care enough to be asking questions, or care enough to write a paper well, because that's what it's all about. And professors have a lot of time to read these monotonous bare minimum papers, because there's always going to be those. But if you can be the student who writes a paper really well, then that professor may or may not be the person who writes you a letter of recommendation for some of these things, like a scholarship or a study abroad program or stuff like that. So writing is the gateway to all success. I'll say that in a college career for sure.
I would say take time to read, like for fun, even though like some of you might not like to read. If you just kind of like in your free time just go on like a website and watch like South Park or whatever, it kind of wastes your time. But like if you find a fun book, you'll start to realize that you pick up on the language, and you can use those as like references, really. Like sometimes when I'm writing, I'll think of a word and I'm like, oh, that fits so well. Why do I not know what it is? And then I'm like, oh yeah, pallid means pale, because that guy in this book was doing that or whatever. And like, I don't know, just find time to read, because it's fun. It really is.
All right, well, thanks for progressing through those questions for us. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask of the panelists?
Just to clear up any confusion, yes, Michigan State's going to win, so please don't ask. Michigan State will win, okay? So that's clear.
Oh, a question. All right. Okay, if I can just paraphrase, just in case this is being recorded. So the question was, sorry, I didn't have a chance to get that mic up to you. When you wrote essays for college entrance exams or scholarships, were there any that you didn't get into? Were there any rejections, let's say?
No. I was not rejected. I only applied to Michigan State, and I've only applied to a couple of scholarships while I've been at Michigan State, and I got all of them. I just recently applied for a grant, a research grant, which I thankfully got, mostly because my professor who I'll be working with, you know, they edited it and they made me sound way better. But I mean, no, I kind of narrowed down my selections and just went all out.
I did just apply to Grand Valley, just the one institution as well, kind of taking baby steps from GRCC to Grand Valley. So as I start getting into grad school, perhaps I'm probably going to start getting some denials, which is fine.
I applied to 6 institutions, originally because I was going to do a dance major. So I was applying to a bunch of different ones around Michigan. Had to write an essay for every single one, and I did not get denied. I will say that I think a couple of times for a couple of the institutions, Wayne State in specific had like a really hard, well not hard, a really complex essay topic and that I was worried about. And also they have kind of a high expectations for dance majors with grades. They want you to have A's and B's. I'm not necessarily an A and B student all the time, especially in high school. So when I sent my transcripts in, I was a little worried. But I felt like because I was able to write a really good essay, I got in and I ended up getting like the presidential scholarship, which is like the full ride there. And it was because of my essay. So an institution that I was worried about getting into because of my grades, I kind of turned it around with an essay. Spent a lot of time on it, kind of went above and beyond what they asked and ended up getting that full ride there. So I really think my essay kind of turned that around. Yeah.
I just applied to Grand Valley. I don't think there was an essay.
Questions? Oh, yes. Hang on.
I think you guys are all probably great writers. That's what I'm guessing. I wonder how that has set you apart from your peers or been an advantage to you as a student.
Well, I felt like the higher up I went in Grand Valley, the writing got poorer. I think it's just because people are done with school at that point, and I read some really bad essays, like really bad, and it makes you stand out, yes, of course, but it makes you kind of feel bad because like these people can't explain what they're thinking. Like there was an essay where this girl, she was trying to make a point that physician-assisted suicide was bad, but she did so by explaining, like defining it differently, like as an introduction for each paragraph, and like I had to sit down with her and I'm like, you're not giving me a really good explanation of what you believe, and she just kind of just brushed it off, and I don't think that's good because these are people who are trying to be professionals in your field, and you want to be able to like read what they think, and it made me want to write better, and I feel like that's something we should all do is like write better because it shows our level of intelligence, and like why not show everybody what you're thinking and how you're thinking it, because I mean we all have our own perspectives of right and wrong and beautiful and like all that stuff, and why not show our uniqueness through writing, whether it be lab reports or just research papers.
Were you trying to touch on among your peers, writing among your peers? I know specifically I have a professor that he asked me before a lecture, come to my office and let's go through the reading real quick, because he sees that I show a genuine interest in what the reading is. It was poetry in specific, so I would make a point for that week of lectures to go before class, run through the reading, and that's something that I know a lot of my peers aren't doing in that class in particular, but I am a non-traditional student. I'm 27, and a lot of the kids in that English class are sophomores and freshmen, but for the most part, you know, you're just a part of the general curriculum.
I would say that, I mean, it's hard to say that somebody is just a clear-cut, very naturally good writer. I think in any field or subject of study, the more you do something, the better you are. You know, the more you practice a sport, the better you're going to be. The more you practice writing, the better you're going to be. And I practice writing a lot. I write ridiculous amounts during my free time, and then so when I start to focus my writing on subject material in some course, it's a little more obvious to professors that you spent more time with that subject material than, say, the student who procrastinates and waits until I know I'm speaking to a lot of you. I'm that person a lot too. Waiting till like the last moment and then printing it off and just conceding to the good feeling that you get after you've just finally gotten rid of the weight of that paper. I mean, that's all well and good, but a professor can tell the difference between that paper and a paper that's been worked on for even a few days to a week. I mean, generally you're going to get your paper topics pretty early on, and you have time to write out a well thought out essay, and there's really no reason not to. I mean, we can come up with all the excuses in the world that we want to. I mean, nobody really sits down and is just like, yeah, I'm going to write this essay because I love whatever we're writing about. But, I mean, sometimes you do. I do these days. But I would say that it's set me apart a little bit just in the time that I've spent with professors because they can tell that I care. I think there's a certain degree of being genuine if you dedicate enough time to writing. When I say enough, I mean you can go over the top and that's going to be better, but if you dedicate enough time to writing, that's going to be at least more than 24 hours prior to the due date.
I think that as far as among other students and peers, when you have well-developed, well-practiced writing, you kind of automatically stand out. When a professor can tell that you've practiced, you've used your resources, you haven't just thrown together something, you're not doing the basics, you're going to stand out. There are, people at four-year institutions who still don't know, how to not change from past tense to present tense in your paper. Things like that are still happening at four-year institutions where people are changing tenses in their paper, which is a no-no. There's still stuff happening like in the intro. I'm going to tell you about this in my paper, which is another big no-no. There's still that stuff happening at four-year institutions because it's not stuff that's going to make you fail a class, but it's stuff that you shouldn't be doing in your writing. So when you know how to write well and you've practiced and you've spent a lot of time, you just automatically stand out among your peers, I believe. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody, and let's thank our panelists.